For Real News is sponsored by assholes like you, so pay up, motherfucker. Obviously, the subject of this series is the Real News Network, which, along with a number of other progressive news organizations, which will also be covered, such as The Intercept and TYT and various other ones, they present news from what they claim is an unfiltered progressive viewpoint. Now, that's fine. What I object to is that they claim that they are the voice of the truth, that they represent the real situations of people living in the lower class or the middle class. And I think that, to be quite frank, they misrepresent their views so much that you would think that they are some sort of underground railroad for information that is being ignored. To be honest with you, I think that a lot of their information is against the mainstream media's official story on it, but a lot of it actually goes along to currents that are actually quite mainstream. And I think when you see this video chronicling their choice of how to cover Venezuela and Brazil and Colin Kaepernick and all points in between, you'll see what I'm talking about. So we'll start with the theater of athletics and sports, where Nina Turner had this conversation with an activist named Kendrick Sampson at the People's Convention in Maryland. And the topic of Colin Kaepernick came up. So let's hear about their coverage of this one person who has obviously gotten tons of media exposure.
Well, speaking of racism, Colin Kaepernick, right, the football player that really re-energized, I think, athletes in terms of them being activists too. People like Muhammad Ali comes first and foremost to my mind, and Jackie Robinson and Arthur Ashe, who we don't really talk about a lot, but just moving back to the greatest. I mean, he really lost. I mean, he lost his belt. He lost his title in the prime of his life, fighting for a cause that was bigger than him when it came to the Vietnam War. I mean, he laid it on the line. And here we have Colin really kind of walking in those same footsteps in the 21st century, who said, I am not going to say the Pledge of Allegiance. I'm not going to rise for this as long as black bodies are not respected. What is some of your take on that? And
it was super eye-opening to me, you know, and I'm so proud that he'll be remembered more for what he did for people of color and standing up for that cause than even his career that he's passionate about, you know, and facing all the ridicule and the persecution and
Okay, so he said one thing that was accurate, and so did she. Well, actually, she didn't say anything that was accurate. What he said was that he'll be remembered far more for his position on this national anthem than he ever will be for his pro career. And I agree with that, because his pro career, apart from one Super Bowl appearance in 2011, was basically that of a mediocre quarterback, a flash in the pan. There's a lot of quarterbacks that have had similar careers where they did very little, and eventually they got replaced or benched or whatever, and he's one of them. But because of this cause where they claim that he was persecuted, where's the evidence of persecution? The NFL did not force him to stand for the national anthem. The NFL never forced him to apologize for anything he did. In fact, his statements were so ridiculous at certain points. His statement on Fidel Castro, especially, his lies and misrepresentations of his record with the black community, where all he's done is shield a black woman who was convicted of murdering a police officer, and also of offering hurricane aid for Hurricane Katrina when it amounted to about $1 million, and Fidel Castro had refused similar aid about 5 years earlier. But progressives see that as something that George Bush did, where he denied the people of New Orleans real aid. Well, it turns out that compared to a lot of the other nations that contributed, Cuba's contribution was very, very small. It was about 1/50th of Qatar's, because I think Qatar contributed $50 million. And I could send you the article on that. I'll actually try to post it below if I can remember. But notice how they inflated this one athlete who was barely registered as, a starter for most of his career. He was benched in his last year. The year before the protest, he also was benched at one point, I believe. He's been injured several times, and they elevate him to the status of Jackie Robinson and Muhammad Ali, who were both peak athletes in their profession and landmark athletes on the or landmark activists for the rights of black people in America. How can you compare the two when Robinson and Ali both faced much harsher persecution, and they took stands that were much more controversial for their times than Colin Kaepernick, and they faced harsher repercussions? So how do we explain this? Well, it's pretty simple. The real answer to this question is that the real news is not interested in student activists or athletic protests. They're not interested in athletes with a cause if the cause doesn't suit theirs. And yesterday I talked about Miguel Cabrera, who is, in my opinion, and I think the opinions of many people, the best all-around batter in the Major League Baseball since the great Tony Gwynn in the 80s and 90s. Miguel Cabrera is talking about a real cause where his own family may be at risk, and of course I can't state categorically that it's at risk, but he said in the media that his mother is under threat of basically kidnapping. It says, after years of keeping quiet about the growing crisis in his native land, this is the Detroit Free Press, by the way. Detroit Tigers star Miguel Cabrera is swinging hard at Venezuela's government, saying he's tired of fearing for his family's lives and paying money to protect them from violence. I am tired of hearing they are going to kidnap my mother, and I don't know whether it is a policeman or a bad guy. I don't know who they are. All I know is if I don't pay, these people will disappear. Cabrera said in a video that he posted to his Instagram account Monday, which marked the first day of the All-Star break. The comment, made in Spanish, was one of several that Cabrera made in a series of videos that he posted on the popular social media site. A Spanish translator transcribed the videos for the Free Press today. Warning that says the above video contains some explicit words that may be offensive to some readers. Here's a sampling of what Cabrera said about the economic crisis that has been building in Venezuela, his desire to help bring about change back home, and why, after being urged not to meddle in politics, he's speaking up now. He says, I am only going to tell you one thing. The first advice I was given was not to get involved in politics, and I never have. But right now we have to get involved because they have kidnapped our country, Cabrera said in one video. Cabrera also spoke of threats that had been made against him. They are telling me I am a pain in the ass. I'm out here fighting for my people. You might say, oh, he is out here living the good life while we are out here suffering in Venezuela, like I was told by the Chavistas. If you come to Venezuela, we will break you. We will kill you. Cabrera also pleaded for the safety of his family. The only thing I will tell you is please do not hurt my family. I am begging you. And then it says Cabrera stopped short of calling himself a rebel, but stressed his support for fighting to improve life in Venezuela. Well, my people, I couldn't be more clear. I am not with the dictatorship or with anyone. I am not with this or with that, or I'm not going to side with this side because I have money or whatever the fuck else. I'll only tell you one thing. We have to fight for a better country. We have to find a solution. He continued, this is a greeting for the people of the resistance, he said. You are not alone. We will continue to support you. Cabrera also refuted claims that he is paid by people in the U.S. to condemn Venezuela. He says, when people say something about you Americans are getting paid, no one pays me anything. Which American pays you anything? They don't pay for anything. Cabrera also reacted to criticism he hasn't done enough to help folks back home, and he defended his millionaire status. I don't want to hear about how I am this or that. I grew up in the slums and I know what it's like. Well, my people, I'm going to speak clearly. What do you want me to do to help in Venezuela? You want me to send guns? Because I've already helped Venezuela a lot. I have sent medicine, I have sent food, I have sent this and that. Cabrera also called for elections in Venezuela. He said, my people, I am speaking to you from the heart. There is no war. There is only a war for power. Let's call for elections. Call yourself whatever you want, a Chavista, opposition, whatever you want to call yourself, but we need to have elections. Cabrera's pleas for change in Venezuela come 13 years after the mother of another Venezuelan tiger, former relief pitcher Huguet Urbina, was kidnapped and held for $6 million ransom in southwest Venezuela. Cabrera, one of the most famous players from the country, played for Venezuela in the World Baseball Classic in March. In recent months, he has weighed in on the Venezuelan crisis, but his comments were low-key. So, not to go through this all, but they've kind of been belittling the real implications of this. Miguel Cabrera is speaking out against a real tyrannical regime that is directly threatening his family, apparently. And people are accusing him of being a Yankee pawn, that the United States is telling him what to say. Well, how about we go back to what happened with Kaepernick? Nobody pretended that, the mainstream media was very receptive to his cause, even though, in my opinion, and if you look at how things went down, it's very credible that he did it in order to attract attention so he could get back his starting position from Blaine Gabbert. Okay? But somehow he has become this cultural icon of the real news, and they report him, even though they don't do almost any other sports reporting. They reported on this Colin Kaepernick, who is one of the biggest frauds in the history of sports, has done virtually nothing for the sport of football to change anything. He's nothing close to being the magnitude of a player of Miguel Cabrera. Hell, I don't even think he's as much of an impact player as Tim Tebow, if you really want to talk about it. And that's the attitude that the real news takes for it. And I'll tell you what, it transcends sports. It transcends just local politics in the United States. The real news and all the other related networks or news outlets that are in its orbit or in its constellation, whatever you want to call it, they are ideological fanatics for socialism, and they will take up the cause of any disgusting pawn of socialism that they can in order to deceive you and convince you that they are out to better humanity, and it simply isn't the case. And I'll demonstrate it. This is part one. I'll demonstrate it time and time again. This is part one of, I'm going to do 3 parts today, possibly 4 parts, possibly just 2 parts, but we'll see how much I get done. And then, you should let your views known to these outlets that are spinning this disgusting propaganda in favor of the Venezuelan regime and all these other communist tyrants.